When you use the word hukam, it still sounds like there's a God in the sky that has decided to create all the chaos in the world. And that is the God that the younger generations will categorically denounce. Why should we worship that God if he creates such misery and chaos? What is there to worship? What kind of God is that creates disease in babies and creates some people that has so much wealth and other people have so much poverty? What kind of God is that? Why are you worshipping that God? But we're not worshipping that God. Guru Nanak's wisdom is clearly labeled as truth. That which is. No one from any tradition, whether they're religious, spiritual, or even atheist, can deny that there is a reality to life right now. Now, can you be in alignment with that reality? We're not worshipping anything. Don't worship God. There's no one sitting in the clouds waiting for your prayers. Can you fall in love with life as it is, with all the ups and all the downs? And the truth of the matter is, most of us can't. We can't fall in love with life. The only thing that we've fallen in love with is our mind's vision of life. And the hard truth is, most of us are not willing to accept that our children have to go through their own ego journey. Most of them will have to suffer and know suffering before they can know how to get out of suffering. Suffering is the entry point to spiritual wisdom. You have to know that the world is misery. You have to know that your life has been miserable and everything that you've tried has not led to any long-lasting happiness. Unfortunately, the children are full of optimism. They think that everything is going to fall in their laps. They're full of a blissful ignorance. And as parents, we don't want them to go through that pain. The only way to teach your children is for you to become that person that they can look up to. That they can see, even when life was bad, I saw mom and dad and they were consistently blissful. I want to be like that. That's the only thing that they can look at and see this is a walking example of someone who's living what they're preaching. I get so many questions from parents, how do we teach our children? And the difficult answer is, how do you teach yourself? We want to pass the buck. We want them to learn something. But that's taking the responsibility away from us. Now the question is, how do I teach myself? Am I truly peaceful in life? Am I blissful? And then, whenever they go through their ups and downs, which they will, you can respond with your love, with your compassion, and you can show them, look, there's a different way to respond to this moment. They're going to go through their traumas. They're going to go through their heartbreaks. They're going to get their dreams trampled on. Are you going to avoid all of that? As a parent, you want to protect your child. But you cannot protect them from the ups and downs of life. No matter what you do, there will be downs. You can show them how to survive emotionally, mentally, through the ups and downs of life by how you act through those same ups and downs.
Another question is that what is death, right? Why we die? And why some religion believe that there's a life cycle, there's a reincarnation, but some other religion believe that there's not. So what kind of contradiction it is if it's all about divine power?
So the question is, what is death? Why do we die? And what happens after we die? The death that you and I talk about is of no interest to spiritual masters. The spiritual masters say, don't worry about dying, we're all dead right now. They say the only person who is alive is the one who is awake, the spiritually awake. Every moment that you are in your ego, Every moment that you believe, I exist, I am me, you are already dead. And yet that is a death that you do not worry about. The spiritual masters want you to become so comfortable with death that your entire focus of your day becomes about dying, but not the death of your body. That is irrelevant. The death of your ego is the only death that you must concern yourself with. Because the death of the body is something you can do nothing about. It is built into the system of life. The people who run away from death have an unrealistic view of the world. It is like wanting sunrise without wanting sunset. One cannot exist without the other. The reason the sun rises today is because the sun set yesterday. They are directly related to each other. Birth and death are part of the same cycle. So, to try and create an enemy out of death, like somehow it is something bad that is going to happen, is the most foolish way of looking at life. It is built into the system of life. If you're not fighting your birth, then you don't need to fight your death. You had no say on your birth, and you have no say on the fact that you will die. It is already there. But what comes between birth and death? That is for you to concern yourself with. Let alone we worry about what's going to happen after I die. You're not even figuring out what you're doing while you're alive. You haven't solved that puzzle yet. The spiritual masters are the ones who say that I am dead and alive. I am truly alive, and yet the world is dead to me. Whatever happens in life, whatever happens with this body, is irrelevant to them. They are spiritually alive. Jivan Mukt. Jivat Mare, alive and dead at the same time. This is the thing that we have to keep reframing ourselves. Am I interested in this subject? Am I interested in really knowing what comes after that death? Everyone wants to know what's going to happen to my soul when I go. But the masters are saying, if you die now, what you get is supreme bliss. Yet we want some sort of supreme heaven bliss, where nothing goes wrong, everyone is floating in the clouds, there's unlimited food. Everyone wants that kind of life. Everyone wants a heaven. I like to think that the moment that you die, one thing is going to happen. Your soul is going to rise, and then you're going to hear a voice. And the voice is going to say, how did you like heaven? And you're going to turn around and say, no, I've just died. I'm waiting to go into heaven. And the voice will say, I created a beautiful world with oceans and mountains and trees and forests, all the fruit and vegetables of all different flavors, all different animals, plants, vegetation, flowers. And you want another heaven? What happened to the heaven that I gave you? You didn't know how to be happy in that heaven. You don't deserve a second heaven. Everybody's looking for heaven tomorrow. The masters are saying, there is a heaven here now.
My question is, on your own path of finding God, when did you decide that you want to share this with others? And was that transition with ease for you, or was that hard for you to then, go out and share everything that you share?
Thank you. So the question is, in my own journey, what was that decision that said that I would try and share whatever I've experienced with the world? The reason I do what I do is because of a deep-rooted frustration with what is happening in the world right now. This wisdom has existed throughout human history, and yet society has created a world where we teach everything else except ultimate peace and happiness. And yet every human being is only searching for peace and happiness. I like to think of the wisdom of the spiritual masters as a method of happiness, as the only proven method of happiness that actually works. And yet everything that we do in our life is a proven method of happiness that will not work. You will not get happy by getting lots of money. You will not get happy by getting married and having children and thinking that that is going to fulfill you. It may give you temporary happiness, but because those things can't last, your happiness is tied to things that cannot last. So you don't know how to be happy within yourself. You only know how to be happy as long as certain things are attached to your life. So that is not the right method of happiness. There are spiritual masters that have the right method of happiness. And once you have a taste of that, then you want to share that taste with everyone else. For me, I like to think of when you've listened to a wonderful piece of music, or when you watch a movie that you've fallen in love with. What's the first thing you do? You speak to your friends and you say, have you watched that movie? You must go watch it. Have you heard this piece of music? It's going to change your life. What is that that makes you want to do that? That's some deep-rooted compassion built into human beings that says that if we experience something so impactful in our own lives, that we want to share that impact with others. Now, I've always said that I do not represent the truth. I am not a living example of this wisdom. I'm simply trying to point you back to the wisdom, which is why I keep saying, don't follow me. I don't know the answers. I'm struggling to practice all of this wisdom in the same way that the rest of us are. But this wisdom has had a massive impact on my life. So I don't sit on a stage because I am somebody who's perfected this wisdom. I sit on the stage because I'm someone who knows the impact of this. And I've always had within my own mind this imposter syndrome. Sitting on a stage thinking, who do you think you are? Do you have all the answers? I know what goes on in here. I know my own mind. I know my own flaws. But I also know that there is such a need for this wisdom that if I don't share what little I have, genuinely there are so few people in the world that are doing this. There are not enough people. Even though I am completely unqualified to sit on this stage, I know that there is value in doing this. People's lives will improve even by someone as unqualified as me trying to share what I know.
I'm just going to go through a question and we'll come back to the audience. So there's a question here, Riji, which is, why do I tear up during meditation or when chanting mantra? It is not a sad feeling, but tears just roll out.
The question is around, why do I cry? Why do I experience tears during mantra, during meditation? There is only one of two reasons why we experience that emotional outpouring, especially during meditation. One is that we have put on a brave face for far too long in the world, and the reality is that we're struggling, and that we have been convinced that we shouldn't show our emotions to the world. And so we go about our days suppressing our emotions, suppressing the deep-rooted feelings. And when you sit with yourself, those feelings come out. Everything that you have pushed deep down comes out again and again. The other reason, for some people, they say, I'm not suppressing anything, my life's okay. I have a good life, everything is going well, I'm not suppressing anything deep-rooted. And yet they continue to experience those outpouring of emotions, is because that's your heart telling you that nothing else has really solved this deep-rooted yearning that's within you. There's something within you that's saying that up there in that greater expanse, when you think about that oneness, when you think about whatever it is that you're meditating on, something that says, this is home. And every day that I go out into the world, I don't experience that home. So that other reason is when you're crying like you've come back home. That I feel that this is where I belong. This is what I should dedicate my life to. And yet everything else that I'm doing is just me fulfilling my responsibilities, my duties, the things that I have to do. But it's not me connecting back to my true roots, back to my true home. So you have to ask yourself, if you're experiencing one of those two emotions, which one is it? Both of those are trying to tell you something. Either you're suppressing who you really are, what is really important to you, emotional things that you're dealing with that you're not able to express, or it's a sign telling you that there is something greater that you're looking for. Both of them are pointers, both of them are leading you back home.
I have a few questions here, which are, first thing is that you said in many videos that having expectations leads you to troubles. But there are certain things you have minimum expectations from a relationship. For example, child have from parents, parents have from child, brother from sister, partners, friends. Is not having those small expectations, which one should have it or not? And second question is about self-forgiveness, about one of your videos about self-forgiveness. If we did something bad to someone, we all did somewhere something bad, and we regret it, we say, Pashtatap. Every morning I wake up, and every morning I say, I'm sorry to that person, even though that person is not with me anymore, or that's not close to me. I really wish that message has been passed to that person, but I wake up every morning with that guilt that I hurt somebody in the past. What shall I do to remove that guilt from me? But again, thank you so much. You're a lifesaver for me. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I used to say that you should avoid expectations and live within reality. And the more I understood within myself what did I mean by that, I started calling it fantasies rather than expectations. Because you're right. The truth is, we do enter into relationships with a certain level of expectations. When you enter into a marriage, a partnership, there's an expectation that you're going to work as a team. When you have a family, there's an expectation that everyone's going to work together as part of the family, to chip in, to do their duties. Children should have expectations that their parents are going to be there to protect them, to look after them, to nurture them. Even at work, we have expectations when you hire a contractor to do some work, when you hire an employee, there's an expectation that they're going to do it. So it's not wrong for you to set out certain rules for how people should conduct themselves. The only thing that I try and warn you against is putting your happiness on them meeting your expectation. Because that is where disappointment comes in. It is not in creating the expectation. Because your mind is creating expectations all the time. But if you create happiness as a condition of that expectation being met, that's where we go wrong. So make your happiness regardless of whatever you expect other people to do. In fact, your happiness is not dependent on other people. Be happy regardless of whether anybody or anything is doing something that meets your expectation. Otherwise, you're right. everyone should create some level of a contract with another person that we should act in a certain way. The question around self-forgiveness is a very important one. There's a really simple way for you to forgive yourself. Ask yourself, today, if I had that same choice, would I make that same mistake? You're probably thinking of one specific scenario, something that you did, someone that you hurt, some decision that was made, that now looking back you think, I wish I didn't do that. But today, knowing what you know now, would you make that same decision? You wouldn't. So you are trying to judge the old you based on what you know now. The old version of you did not know what you know now. The old version of you only knew whatever he knew up to that point. So if you can clearly say, knowing now what I know, I wouldn't make that same decision, then ask yourself, with compassion, back to your old you, knowing what he knew then, would he make that same decision again? Yes, he would. That's where compassion comes in. You have to have compassion for the old you because he didn't know. You know, but the yesterday you didn't know. He only knew whatever he knew. That's why he made that decision, thinking that was the right decision. The question is, how long do you want to carry the guilt? How long do you want to carry that pain? And is that pain serving you in any way? Is it something that you're enjoying? More importantly, the old you is gone. The only you that you have left is today's you. And yet you're hurting today's you for yesterday's you decision. He's gone. He's not there. You might wish that he didn't do what he did, but he did. But he's not there to live with the consequences. You're there living with those consequences. And sometimes the old you makes such bad decisions that your everyday now is living out those consequences. Even still, you must realize that this is how the story is now. And the only person that you're hurting is yourself now. Sometimes some of those decisions are so painful. There are so many awful things that we wish we didn't do. And we can live our life thinking, I wish my life wasn't what it was today. I wish my life is not based on that decision. If I could go back, I would make that decision again and again. And if you could, you would. But you can't. The only moment that you have is now, and you're ruining it. You're destroying now. The past has already been ruined. You're ruining now. Guess what's going to happen in the next? You're ruining your future as well. That's what you have to ask yourself. Is that really what I want? Do I want to ruin past, present, and future? Or am I going to make a shift now? Is something going to change? That even though the hardest decisions, the most difficult, painful things that have happened in the past have happened, can I know what peace is now? Remember that when we're talking about forgiveness, we're not talking about forgetting. There's a very big difference. Even if somebody else has hurt you, we don't want to forgive sometimes because we're saying, I don't want to forgive you because it means I've forgotten what you've done, and I haven't forgotten. Forgiveness is not the same as forgetting. Forgiveness means remembering without the pain. There's a huge difference. You can remember what has happened without the pain. That is possible. But right now, you're remembering with pain. That's the only difference.
We did talk about the topic of karma, or the action and reaction or consequence. I can kind of relate to the one-to-one like for an individual. How do we explain when it happens in a collective fashion, in a sense that there's war or there is a catastrophe like hurricanes? How does karma theory work in that instance? Thank you.
So the question is, how does karma work not on an individual basis but on a collective basis? The reality is there is no such thing as a crowd. Crowd. What is a crowd? A collection of individuals. You cannot remove all the individuals and still have a crowd. So the collective is always a group of individuals. And when you have one person acting in a certain way, certain actions leading to certain consequences, and part of those consequences is that it's influencing other people, then you end up with a collective. So there is no such thing as a collective. We're all carrying out our actions and simply seeing the reward of those. Sometimes we can see atrocities that are happening in the world and we think, what is happening to those people is terrible. What did they do to deserve it? And the truth of the matter is sometimes there isn't a simple answer of 1 + 1 = 2. What we're looking for is a simple explanation that says they did this because of that. The difficult reality of life is that it's very messy, life is very complicated, and life is not black and white. And the hardest thing is to try and find a sense of inner peace when there is chaos happening around you. Because it hurts, because we're compassionate beings. We want everyone to be happy. In fact, within the Sikh tradition, we end every prayer with Sarbat Dapala. May everyone be okay. My question to you is, within the Sikh tradition, that phrase Sarbat Dapala is part of the Ardas. Those of you who are familiar with it. That Ardas has been going on for at least 100 years. The modern version of the Ardas that we read is about 100 years old. That means for 100 years, every Gurdwara in the world, several times a day, has said the same prayer for 100 years. When are you going to get Sarbat Dapala? If it hasn't happened in 100 years, in every Gurdwara has been praying for it several times a day, 365 days a year, for 100 years, when is God going to listen to that prayer? When will Sarbat Dapala happen? That's when you realize Sarbat Dapala isn't sometime in the future. We're not asking for some unrealistic future where nothing goes wrong. As long as human beings are going to be around, chaos is going to be around. Because you yourself are in chaos. The human mind is in chaos, so what else is going to happen to the human society? When we ourselves are living in our own chaos. So there is no moment in future that is ever going to come when there isn't conflict, when there isn't battles, when there isn't war, when there isn't oppression. There is never going to be a time in human future when we have Sarbat Dapala. So what is that prayer asking for? For me, Sarbat Dapala is not a moment in the future. The word Sarbat Dapala means wellness of all. That is not a prayer for the future. That is a manifesto for the Khalsa. That is a mission statement that we will strive for the wellness of all. We will live for the betterment of all. If you are spiritual, you have lost your ego. If you've lost your ego, you don't spend your entire day working for the ego. You spend your day in service of others. That is a mission statement that we may be guided to provide wellness for all. Tere pane sarbatta pala. If it is within divine will, then may we have wellness for all. But it's not a moment in the future. It cannot be. Because there's never been a time in human history when there's not been chaos.
I'm a Catholic. They say Jesus died for our sins. I would like to know what you think about this. Do we still need to check our actions?
So the question is, in the Catholic tradition, what is being taught is Jesus died for your sins. So do you still need to check your actions? Or is everything solved for you? Is everything done for you? I don't take the line, Jesus died for your sins, to mean that every single person has a free pass to do whatever they want for the rest of their life. Jesus died because of your sins. Because of the sins of the people, they took a holy person and killed him. The sins of the people was that they could not recognize a spiritual master. That is the sin of the people, the reason why Jesus died for your sins. He died because humanity was too blind to see a spiritual master. And so the collective put a spiritual master on the cross and killed him like a common criminal. But that doesn't mean that everybody who does that, who follows that master for all moments in future, get a free pass. It's too easy. You cannot say, I dedicate my life to Jesus, I get a golden ticket to heaven. I have to do nothing else. Or I do all the sins and I simply go and I confess my sins. That has made it too easy for you, and all that has done is given you a delusion to believe in. If you want a free pass to heaven, you have to do what Christ said. He said, no one knows the kingdom of heaven. No one will go to the kingdom of heaven except through me. He said, I have found the kingdom of heaven. And he said, if you want to find the kingdom of heaven, go through me. Live like I have. Do what I do. Become Christ-like. If you become like Christ, you will get the kingdom of heaven. But simply just aligning yourself with him and saying that he will do everything for you, you ask yourself in your own life, are you completely blissful in all moments? Because Christ was. And if you're not blissful in all moments, then Christ has more to teach you. Do not give yourself such an easy free pass, hoping for some future heaven after you die. Heaven that Christ was offering was not available after you die. Christ said, I found heaven now. I am in the kingdom of heaven now. He wants you to also be in that same kingdom of heaven now. So there's more work to be done. It's not so simple. You don't get a free pass. And you certainly don't get to damn every other person from every other tradition that says that you are all sinners, but I align myself with Christ, so I get a golden pass. That's too easy. That's tribalism. That's simply saying my group is better than your group. We have the right master, you have the wrong master. The truth is all masters are pointing in the same direction. If somebody is pointing at the moon, we're just looking at the finger. Don't look at the finger of the master, look at where they're pointing. They are showing you something. You must become like Christ. And there is so much wisdom in every tradition. Don't feel guilty about being in any tradition. Don't feel like you have to convert to anything else. Just go deep. Go deep dive within the wisdom. It's there. It's all there. But in order to do that, you have to do what Christ did. You have to be willing to go against the establishment. He went in the markets and he was throwing all the tables and all the market stalls, and he was making chaos. He was saying, you've all got it wrong. Do that. Do that with every establishment, including your own church, because they haven't pointed you in the right direction. The truth is in the Bible. The truth is in the word of Christ. The opening lines of first there was the word is perfectly matching with so many other ancient traditions. The word was with God and the word was God. What is that word? What is that sound? What is it that Christ could hear that you cannot hear? Within Guru Nanak's tradition, it's the same word. It's called Shabad. It is the sound of the divine that is flowing right now. You have every opportunity to hear it, to experience it, to connect with it. But you don't get a free pass, like nobody does. Nobody gets a free pass just for belonging to one religion. It's too simple. It's the kind of things we tell our children. But it's time to move away from those fairy tales. The truth of the matter is, you and I are going through chaos in life. Day to day, life is not simple. We are not living the same way that our masters have taught us to live. We are not as truthful as we could be. We're not as kind as we could be. We're not as peaceful as we could be. Focus on that. Once you focus on that, you start walking on the steps of Christ. Follow in his footsteps. Do what he did. But in order to do that, you have to be willing to be as rebellious as Christ was.
My question is, once you've had a glimpse of this oneness that we spoke about in your practice, and you realize that life is experiencing itself, how do you find the motivation to stay interested in life? Like, sometimes the question comes up, what's the point of all this? So how do you find that motivation to keep doing even the most mundane of things in your life? Thank you.
So the question is, when you experience oneness, when you experience some sort of bliss, how do you motivate yourself to do the most mundane things? The question has already been answered in your language. The way that we talk about life is that it is boring. It is mundane. What are the spiritual masters doing that we are not doing? They're simply relabeling every moment of life. You know, when I grew up in India as a small boy, and when I moved to the UK, I found a very interesting phenomenon. Everyone in the UK likes to talk about the weather. If you've got nothing to talk about, you talk about the weather. You do that here? There's nothing else to talk about. You start a conversation about the weather. But very interestingly, coming from India and coming to the UK, I noticed that they had a very specific use of language when it came to rain. Nobody would ever say, it's rainy today. They would say, it's miserable outside. They say, it's gloomy today. And I thought that was very interesting, coming from India, very hot, that the rain was something that we celebrated. As children, we would go and run out in the rain and play in the rain. The rain was something that was welcomed. We saw it and understood it as the water of life, the thing that brings life into all things. When things are drying up, you need the rain. And yet, I was hearing people refer to some perfectly natural phenomenon with negative words. It is gloomy. It is miserable. When the reality is, it's just rain. What are you doing in your life for the simplest of moments that you are calling mundane? The truth of the matter is, go back 10 years and you will try to remember, what did I want my future to be? Did I want to have my own home? Did I want to have a family? 10 years ago, you wouldn't be able to believe the life that you have right now. So back then, this would have been a perfectly acceptable life. And maybe 10 years from now, you will look back at this life and you'll say, I can't believe I had it so good. I wish I could go back to that moment. So we had to train ourselves away from the way society teaches us to look at life. Life can be a heaven or a hell. The only factor that determines that is your mind. Is your mind going to make this moment a heaven, or is your mind going to make this moment a hell? The spiritual masters make every moment a heaven. So, and think about some of the difficulties that they had to face. These spiritual masters that we talk about, they went through incredible atrocities. So many times people directly tried to kill them. If they can go through that, what are you going through that you can't deal with? It all comes down to your mind. It all comes down to your mindset. Stop wanting life to change. Start wanting your mind to change.
I've got a very quick question here, and then we'll go back to the audience. I used to do part prayers before marriage. How can I connect back to that routine? As in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking, part karna hai, I have to do my prayers, but there's lack of time.
The question is around how do I connect with prayers? At one point in my life, I had a regular routine. The question you have to ask yourself is not, how do I get back into the routine? The question is, why did I stop? And the truth of the matter is, everything that you love, you make time for. The reason you stop, and sometimes we have some genuine responsibilities and priorities that take over, but we find time. We make time for something that we are in love with. The question is, when did you stop loving this? When did you fall out of love with this? That's a bigger question. And if you've fallen out of love, then how do I reconnect? How do I fall in love with it? And for me, my answer has always been, stop being rigid. Stop creating a routine that feels so restrictive that I have to do all or nothing. What are you in love with? What is your way of falling in love and connecting with the divine? Remember, there is a huge relationship between connection and love. Guru Nanak's tradition is called Prem Bhakti. Devotion through love. So what is your loving way to connect with it? I'm not a big fan of creating rigidity and rules. That means that you do it whether you connect or not. Whether you love it or not, you just follow those rules. That might work for some people, and it's no judgment. There are some people that can just keep doing something again and again. Whether they're enjoying it or not, they have a discipline that means that they carry on doing it. But there are other people that say, no, I need to connect with it. I need to fall in love with it. So the question is there one way for you to show love? Think about your own relationships. In your own relationships, the way that you show love to each other changes over time. And when you first fall in love with someone, you have a honeymoon period, and you're going out all the time. You may be enjoying holidays, you may be enjoying your time in different ways. But then life changes, and then you connect in slightly different ways. You show that connection in different ways. Maybe it's that you don't have time to go out anymore, but you connect through your words, through your acts of service, through any way that shows each other that we're still connected. We still have this commitment towards each other.
If you enjoy learning spiritual teachings and you're looking to deepen your understanding, the most effective way is to learn with a group of friends. Right now, you can set up your very own Nanak Naam meetup group from the comfort of your own homes. Gather your friends, family members or colleagues and start your very own wisdom group by visiting livingwithwisdom.org. There, you'll find a range of Nanak Naam courses designed specifically for groups that you can watch together and discuss. A growing number of people have already started their very own wisdom groups, and it's having a huge positive impact on their lives. Find out how easy it is to start your own wisdom group by visiting livingwithwisdom.org.
I'm trying to think of a moment in my own life that might help. And I can honestly say that I can't think of a moment where I was faced with this question, is God telling me to stop? Or do I need to carry on? I suppose because I've never created that distinction. Is God telling me to do it or do I need to do it? Is God telling me to stop or do I need to stop? How do I know if He wants me to carry on or does He want me to stop? And I suppose that distinction doesn't exist for me. That's why I struggle with that question. I don't have that distinction. Is God trying to teach me a sign? Is God showing me any signs? Which God are you talking about? I genuinely don't know who that is. Who is that God somewhere else who's trying to do something to you? Your very act of walking, talking, breathing is God. God is acting through you. Life is not doing anything to you. It's doing it through you. So when life naturally comes to a halt, I say, okay. When life tells my mind, no, you've still got some juice left in you, you can carry on, I carry on. There's never a moment in my mind when I struggle with that question of is God trying to tell me something? Because I suppose I've made life a little bit easier. I've gotten rid of that God. One of you has to go. It's either you or God. I like to think that Guru Nanak gave you a very magical formula, and that formula was that the answer is always one. There's only one. And if there's me and God, there's two. Which one is going to go? The simple thing is that the spiritual masters have made me and God as the same thing. There's no difference. God is me is God. Now the difficult question is, am I acting out of God or am I acting out of my ego? That's something that you might want to trouble yourself with. But in order to answer that question, you have to know, do I even know what my ego is? And most of us don't know. We're too focused on trying to figure out if God is trying to do something. Maybe your ego is just trying to do something. So there's no simple answer to that one. Or maybe it's very simple.
Hi, Sasikar Viji. My question is continuation to what you said before about it is you 10 years ago that you did wrong, but now if you have the same situation now, you will not do because you know. But what loss you already had there with your relations or anything, how would you be now as you are and get those relations back? Because I'm struggling with that. It's happened with me. Unknowingly, it was done for the benefit of the family, but in that situation, I lost one of my relation, which I have apologized. I pray every day. I forgive just say that I forgive that soul because that person doesn't know what I thought. And I also forgive myself for. So I haven't forgotten, but I have forgiven. But still, whenever I'm alone or I'm sleeping, the whole situation goes around and I keep thinking, I wish I could have done this. This would have been better. What can I do? So it's still not peace. I've forgiven, but it looks like I have not forgiven. So what do I do so that I can overcome that and have the relationship back what it was.
It's very interesting that you actually have two questions. You think your question is, how do I get that relationship back? But that's not your real question. Your question is not, how do I get that relationship back? Your question is, how do I make peace right now? Those are two very different questions, and you're trying to mix the two together. They're two very different questions. One of them is about your mind. The other is about your situation. They say that when a difficult situation happens, you have been hit with two arrows. One is the situation. The second arrow is how your mind deals with that situation. The first arrow you can't do anything about. The second arrow you must do something about. So the question you really need to clarify within your own mind is, which one is it? The reality is that no matter what good actions you've tried to do to resolve that situation, the other person is not willing to move on. The other person is not willing to mend that relationship. That's you trying as much as you can. The real question you have to ask yourself is, how do I make peace with the fact that the other person is not acting the way I want them to act? They are acting, but not the way you want them to act. They've created a reality that doesn't fit with your version of reality. There's your trouble. Yes, you say you've learnt from your mistakes. Yes, you say you've explained to the other person why you acted the way you did. You say you've forgiven yourself for acting out of ignorance. But what you haven't done is let go of the fantasy that everything is going to go back to how it was. So when you lie down in bed and all those thoughts come into your mind, the only question that I've learned to ask myself that has ever given me peace when my mind is in turmoil is, I ask myself, are you enjoying yourself right now? Are you enjoying all this turmoil? The truth is, the other person is not the reason why you've lost your peace. You're the reason why you've lost your peace. You're creating your turmoil. They're not calling you every day and giving you all of these thoughts in your mind. You're creating them for free in your own mind. This is where meditation comes in. Meditation sounds like a complicated word, but a simple way to think about meditation is practicing peace. How much are you practicing peace?
Sat Shri Akal, Veerji, it's a pleasure to be here and experience what everyone else is experiencing. So we've spoken about hukam, and with God's, whatever happens, it happens with that energy's free will or their order. What do you think about manifestations, especially when it comes to self-healing? Or there's a lot of material on social media about, brain waves, manifestation. And Gurbani talks about Sarabro ka Aukhad Naam as well. So I'm very keen to know what your thoughts are on this. Thank you.
Manifestation, law of attraction, in my opinion, is flowery words for law of obsession. It gets even more dangerous when somebody tries to align real spiritual wisdom from the gurus with what, in my opinion, is fake spiritual wisdom. The truth is, most people use manifestation and law of attraction to teach you how to attract wealth and prosperity. And so what you're doing is you're going back into the same trap. The trap of, if I get this tomorrow, I will be happy then. The gurus are saying, We will show you a way to manifest peace now. Regardless of what you do, regardless of what circumstances happen on the outside. Now, that is not to say that there isn't power in you having a positive mental outlook on life. There was a study that was done over many years, one of the biggest studies that was ever done, around trying to figure out whether there were genuinely people in the world who were lucky and there were genuinely people in the world who were unlucky. And after many years of looking at it, the researchers realized that there are some people who are luckier than others. And those are the people that have a positive outlook on life. The ones who started with a positive outlook on life saw everything that happened to them as a good thing. The ones that had a negative outlook on life generally saw that their life was unlucky. So there's a lot to be said about you labeling every moment in the right way. Because remember, your mind is doing it all the time. The one thing that we're all doing is meditating all the time. We're always focusing on something, thinking about something. There's a mantra going on all the time of some sort or another. What the gurus did was, rather than try to silence the mind, they recognized that this is how the mind works. So if your mind is going to be chanting a mantra anyway, let us be proactive in deciding what that mantra is going to be. And how do we change how we look at life? And the simple thing that the masters did is they have no interest in what you manifest. They said, if you're going to manifest something, manifest the divine. There's a beautiful shabad on Mangana. Mangana, Mangana Nika. If you're going to ask for something, the best thing to ask for is the divine name. If you're going to manifest something, manifest God. Why settle for anything less?
I have a two-part question, I guess, in the form of, so I'm sorry if that takes away the next person's question, but it is in applying the wisdom in daily life. It does seem like you actually come to situations where you have to make a decision. I know there's no meh, but it does sometimes feel like you have to make a decision. And with your, in your life, how do you apply that when you're in that situation where you feel like you have to make a very difficult decision? How do you guide yourself? That's one part of it. And I guess the connected part is, if things don't go your way, or I've grown up praying to Babaji and this power above, that this is what I'd like, and there's these kirtans that I constantly recite, like Jo Mange Thakur Apne Te, Soi Soi Deve, or Prab Ke Simran Karaj Pure. How do you link that back to this hukum and acceptance and free will? How does that link?
So the first part of the question was around how you make decisions. And the second is, how do you deal with when things don't go your way, and aligning it with those verses that you mentioned. In terms of how I make decisions, I can only share with you. For me, I'm one of these people that likes to write everything down. I'm very systematic and logical in the way that I do everything. So I'm one of these people that writes a list for everything. So before I go traveling, I've got a list of everything that I need to pack. On the day of traveling, I've got a list and itinerary of everything I need to follow. I've got a list for everything. So when I need to make a decision, it's very simple for me. I write a list. A list of all the things that would be the benefit if it goes this way, the pros and cons. If I make a decision, what are the benefits of it? If I don't do it, what are the cons? What will go wrong? Both ways. I just clarify it. For me, if I write everything down on paper, it means it doesn't have to circulate in my mind forever because it's just there. I'm almost unloading everything and putting it down. That works for me. My wife, on the other hand, is completely different. She has no room for lists. She's a very different person. She listens to her heart. Whether something makes sense later or not doesn't make any difference to how she feels in that moment. In that moment, what is her heart telling her? And she will simply make a decision. And sometimes to my frustration, how did you make that decision? I just went with it. So for someone like me, it's so difficult to understand that, because I'm like, well, didn't you think about the consequences? Didn't you write them down? How did you know whether that was the right decision? She said, I don't trouble myself with tomorrow. I just go with what my heart tells me now. Whatever the outcome of that is going to be, I will let my heart decide at that moment. And I can't work like that at all. I have to plan everything, figure everything out, every step. So it really depends how it works for you. I can share with you what works for me. And moving on from that point, if I've made a list of everything that I think is going to happen, whether it goes this way or that way, and I'm very calculated, chances are that you've sort of thought things through a little bit. If it happens, it'll go like this. If it doesn't happen, it'll go like that. And that's one of the benefits of being an overthinker in that way, that you write everything down, that things rarely happen that are completely unpredicted, because you've sort of spent enough time to figure out all the different permutations in some way. Now, very rarely something can happen in a completely different way, and then you have to just almost laugh at how clever you thought you were, that you could figure it all out, and yet life threw a completely different thing that you didn't even know could happen. And that humbles you. No matter how smart you think you are, life is always finds a way to outsmart you. But you have to make that relationship with life. That life, I'm only going to do what I think is best right now. But the outcome is always in your hands. Nanak sab kich tumre haath mein. Everything is in your hands, God. Yeah? Everything is in your hands. Can you be my sahai, tum hi ho sahai? Can you be the thing that supports me? No matter what else is happening through life, can I always lean on you? Can I always go back to remembering you, that I'm okay with whatever is going to happen? There's a beautiful analogy in the wisdom that says everyone is drowning and the Guru is the boat. What that means is that everyone is drowning in their own minds of overthinking, and those who realize that they're drowning, they get on the boat of wisdom. And the boat of wisdom is what keeps them afloat. It isn't that the people who have wisdom in their life don't have difficulties. Difficulties happen no matter what. You have to be able to overcome difficulties in your own mind, not in life.
Hello. I'd just like to extend my gratitude and thanks for sharing your wisdom. I've got two questions. I start off with one and then another came. So my first one is based on a reoccurring theme in all of your podcasts and videos and what you spoke about today, about the concept of I am. And I would like to know how you can practice that when you're on a journey of self-development and self-growth. So like, if I'm going to the gym, I'll say to myself that I want to be stronger, or like, I want to be healthy, so I want to change my diet. Obviously, we're taking care of this external body, but I always go back into the whole idea of, I want to be stronger, so I want to go to the gym, or I want to take care of my body. But, you know, we keep going back to the idea that it's not ours. So I'd just like to know, like, is that an incorrect way of going about things, or how can I change my perspective to follow the concept, or let go of the concept of I am, but also, I guess, take care of this body that I'm in, so I'm in good health. And I keep using I am, so you can see what the problem is. And then the second question, it's unrelated to this question, so I'll get to that after.
So there's a very simple way to think about how to align yourself with improving yourself and not making it about the ego. And the simple fact is that if you drive a car, there is a certain amount of maintenance involved. And the purpose of that maintenance is the more that you look after it, the longer it'll serve you. So the same should be applied for our bodies. If we put the right things in here, it's going to work with the body, it's going to make the body healthier. If we put the wrong things in here, the wrong fuel, then it's going to cause congestion. It's going to clog up. It's not going to serve you very well. And you don't want to be the cause of that problem, that you're the reason why you made your body miserable. So there's no conflict with improving yourself in that way. The problem comes where the improving on the body is done in the hope that when my body looks like those Instagram models, then I'm going to feel happier. And again, you have to take that with a little grain of salt, because if you're incredibly unhealthy, you probably would feel better. You'd probably feel more active. You'd feel healthier. You'd feel happier that you've actually taken yourself away from being extremely unhealthy into healthier. But you have to really start to look at your own motivations. What are your deep-rooted motivations? That's something you have to ask yourself. Am I doing it because I think I'm going to be more attractive? It's not right or wrong. Maybe you want to do that because you want to be more attractive so that you can actually find the right partner. There's no right or wrong. You really have to start looking at your own sense of self and your own motivations. The question you can ask yourself is, while I'm in the process of improving this body, can I also improve my mind at the same time? Can I experience peace now? Because one thing that we do when we're looking to improve ourselves in whatever field, whether it's in our career, whether it's in our body, whether it's in our finances, is that we make a mental habit of postponing happiness. That I'm not going to be happy until I get this. And what the masters have told us, and what your own experience will tell you, is that if you practice being unhappy, even when you get the body that you want, or the finances that you want, or the job that you want, because you've lived a practice every day of being miserable, you will find another reason to be miserable even then. Because you've created that karma. You've practiced again and again and again saying, I'm not happy now, I'll be happy tomorrow. So that's something you need to be careful of. Try and be happy now, even though you can see that there are improvements to be made. Otherwise, you will make those improvements and yet you will still be miserable.
Thank you for that. That makes a lot of sense. So my second question is about, obviously we've got the 5 banis, and I personally can't recite all of them. The only one I can do is Japji Sahib, only because I've learned through your podcast what it means, so I feel connected to it. But I've been told off for doing it later on in the day. So they say that, timing of the Bani in the morning has to be Japji Sahib, evening has to be Dada Sahib. So I would just like to know, is there a right or wrong in terms of if you are reciting a particular Bani at a different time of the day, only because you do feel more connected to it, or, it just suits you better?
Please answer that question for me. What do you think? What's working for you?
What's working for me? Yeah, I would like the freedom of wanting to do it whenever I want to.
So for me,
sorry?
For me, reciting those verses is me singing a love letter to my divine. And I will not be dictated to when I sing songs of love to the one that I love. It doesn't matter what anybody else says. Whatever is working for them, good for them. As long as you're doing it out of love, there is no magic in those words that fades after midday. They are words of inner transformation. And you yourself will know that those words are working for you. They're allowing you to connect. And if there are verses that you're not connecting with because you simply don't understand the language, then how are you supposed to use that as your love letter? Let me help you out. The Guru specifically says to you, Kya padhiye, kya guniye, kya ved purana suniye. Pade sune kya hoye, jo sahaj na miliyo soye. The Guru specifically says, why are you reading these verses? Why are you listening to them? What is the purpose of reading and listening to them if it doesn't bring stillness within you? That is your Guru's instruction to you on how to use spiritual scripture, how to use these prayers. What is the point of doing them, the Guru asks you, if it is not bringing stillness and peace within you? So as long as it's bringing, that's your mandate. That's the Guru saying to you what the purpose of these scriptures are. For you to find that deep-rooted stillness where you're not listening to the voice of your mind, where you're connecting with that which is peaceful within you, that which is still, that is that everlasting truth that is within you and all other beings. Whatever you use to connect, please connect. All the other people that are doing it are simply doing it out of their own frustration because they can't stand to see somebody doing something different to them. They don't understand why you would choose to do anything else. Have the strength to make this a love letter between you and the divine. And once you're falling in love with the divine, it's like me trying to tell another husband and wife, this is how you should love your wife. Who am I to say? What works between me and mine doesn't necessarily work between you and yours. How can I dictate? In fact, you would turn around and say, who are you to tell us what to do? It is not for you, it is our relationship. Yours is a relationship. You are connecting with your divine. And it is not for anyone else to tell you how to do that.